So before I continue on our discussion, are there any questions? We have finished chapter 2 last week and started on chapter 3, finite difference techniques, and talked about one of the strategies, explicit difference, which we will recap. But before I start talking, if you have questions, let me know. And last week we were having a discussion regarding one of the chapter 1 characteristic function expressions. Was it Devsurjo? Well, Devsurjo has gone missing. Subhrajyoti, do you remember that discussion last Friday? Was it Devsurjo who was asking about this?
It was Devsurjo. Devsurjo
Right?
is saying that in ISI hostel network has gone down.
Hostel net chole geche. So right now.
Right now?
So right now there is no internet connection in the hostel.
No
So
internet
he's unable to
connection in
join.
the hostel. But most of the students are in the hostel, right?
I don't know because I'm joining with my mobile data.
Abhinandan is in the hostel. Abhinandan, what is the situation?
Sir, apparently in some part of the hostel, the internet connection is not coming. In my room, it is.
So should we wait a couple of minutes to see if things come back to normal, or maybe ask your classmates to move to some other room?
Okay, I'm calling Devsurjo and asking what is the solution.
Just check, because if they just maybe if they move to another wing, then they can have connection. That happens sometimes. And today is cloudy, so I understand there might be issues.
I'm calling Devsurjo.
Okay. Okay, fine. So, actually, before I start, I wanted to clarify that VGSA characteristic function problem that we had. Did you check that, Surjo? It is correct, and actually, I have uploaded the reference paper, the famous CGMY paper, in the Google Drive, because that paper has all these and other related expressions along with details. So I thought that it would be a good idea for you to take a look at it. It's a very old paper, 2003, but it has a lot of developments which are discussed in the HITSA textbook. Okay, all right. So I will resume our discussion on chapter 3. On Friday, we talked about how this explicit discretization works. So we use a forward difference for the time derivative and the central difference for the space derivative, the second derivative term, or the diffusion term as it is called. And using numerical approximations, we come to an equation like 321 with a corresponding order of error. The computation works in the way as indicated in this figure 3.2, that these circles are my known points, and combining these values, I fill up the solid circle. And that's how it progresses. Of course, I know the first vertical, the first timeline values, which is the initial condition, and the ceiling and the roof, which are the boundary conditions. So these parts are already known. So whenever I encounter one of these points, the values are already with me. So in the process, we essentially set up a computing algorithm. There were some notational issues, so that I have corrected now. So just check that this is the general form of my UK vector. So the general form of my UK vector will be, I will insert the boundary values in the first and the last component, and the remaining ones are to be filled up sequentially. And using this notation, the recursive scheme can be written as this equation 3.23. So equation 3.23 is my recursive scheme, where I have a tridiagonal matrix. So inversion of this tridiagonal matrix will be faster than inverting a full matrix. We will discuss that later because that impacts on the computational efficiency of the algorithm. So what
স্যার
happens?
ইউকে তে প্রথম আর লাস্টটা হবে না, জিকে এন্ড এইচকে টা, জিকে এন্ড এইচকে টা রো এর সঙ্গে সেটা ছোটার সঙ্গে হবে ইউকে টাতে। ওটা বেসিক্যালি ইউ1 কে আর ইউএন প্লাস 1 কে টা আর জিকে আর এইচকে হয়ে যাচ্ছে, যেটা কি প্লাস আর রো
সেটা এখানেই আছে অলরেডি। ও আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, it is already here. So here it should be just 0 0, right?
হ্যাঁ
I already have the terms here.
হ্যাঁ, ওটা n-1 হবে। ইভেন এই ম্যাট্রিক্সটা n-1 ক্রস n-1।
কোনটা n-1 cross n-1?
এই এক্সপ্লিসিটটা।
But then how can I add two vectors of different dimensions?
এটা বেসিক্যালি ওই ভেক্টরটা হচ্ছে n-1 এরই বেসিক্যালি, ওটা n-1 এরই বেসিক্যালি n-3 টার্ম খানা টার্মস গুলো 0 আছে, আর উপরের একটা u1, k আর নিচেরটা un+1, k।
No, but the grid size cannot change just like that. I cannot change the grid.
Actually uk+1 টাও বেসিক্যালি of dimension n-1 হচ্ছে।
How is that? No, I don't understand now.
বেসিক্যালি যেগুলো আননোন আছে ওইগুলোকে দেখা হচ্ছে। So
Oh, but then you are inserting u1k and un+1k in the wrong place. If it's an n-1 order vector, as you were saying, then how will I keep track?
sir, actually that is for adding the first term that is not like accumulated in the a explicit thing. So if we check like a explicit into UK, so the first term would be like 1 minus 2 row into u2k plus row u3, k. So u1, k would be missing.
Okay,
So that
okay,
is,
so suppose I put k equal to 1 here, because that will give us the starting point. Okay, let's start with that then. So if I am looking at u2 and 2, so I will need row u1 2, 1 minus 2 row, u2 2 2 2 1, and 3 1.
yes.
So I will need that need all the terms then.
Yes, so u1, k টাকে বেসিক্যালি জি কে সঙ্গে রিপ্লেস করে দিচ্ছে, মানে
Of course, u1k is replaced. That part I understand, but the order cannot be n-1.
হ্যাঁ, so ইউকে টার্মস গুলো জাস্ট আননোন গুলো আছে, যেগুলো নোন আছে মানে এক্সট্রিম গ্রিড পয়েন্টস গুলো ওইগুলোকে আলাদা করে অ্যাড করছে আর কি। তো আননোন শুধু n-1 খানা আছে,
unknown n-1 খানা আছে। আচ্ছা আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, okay. কিন্তু মানে how about the multiplication? Because on the other side I need everything.
হ্যাঁ, তো আদার সাইডে জিকে এন্ড এইচকে টা একবার দরকার লাগছে, তো ওটা জাস্ট অ্যাড করে দিচ্ছে, একটা n-1 ভেক্টর ক্রিয়েট করছে যেখানে মধ্যখানে সবকটা 0 আছে, আর এক্সট্রিম পয়েন্টস জিকে আর এইচকে আছে।
মানে that can either be correct at the beginning or at the end, but not together, right? Because this has to be for all k.
Yes.
So then there will be some inconsistency either in the beginning or at the end.
শুভদীপ বুঝতে পারছিস?
I'm still not clear about the n-1 dimension of this thing. I understand that some of these are known. That is fine. That's why we are inserting them. Because anyway, my solution scheme starts from U2 because U1 is already known. That's the first vertical. That is known. But while I'm computing, I'm going to use all these values, including the boundaries and the initial value.
বাউন্ডারিজ গুলোকে আলাদা করে করা হচ্ছে, তাই জন্য বেসিক্যালি ওই আলাদা জিনিসটা আছে। বাউন্ডারি বেসিক্যালি একবার লাগছে জাস্ট ওই প্রথম টার্মটা ক্যালকুলেট করতে, লাস্ট টার্মটা ক্যালকুলেট করতে, ওটা জাস্ট রো এর সঙ্গে অ্যাড করে
For each vertical I need the boundaries. The boundary is not just here. The boundary is not only here. This is the initial condition. This top and the bottom line is also known. This is G and this is H. And for each of the vertical calculation, I will need the boundary conditions. All right, so let's figure it out. Maybe we can write out for a small system. So I'm taking m equal to 2, n equal to 2. Let's start with that. That will be a very simple system and we should be able to write it clearly. I will need all three points in this equation. So 3 is like n plus 1 here. I need all of them.
হ্যাঁ, বাট জিকে এন্ড এইচকে টা দরকার হবে j equal to 2 and j equal to n এর জন্য। j equal to 2 and j equal to n তোটাকে জাস্ট অ্যাড করে দিচ্ছি লাস্ট দুটো পয়েন্টস, আর কিছু করছে না।
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ, সো ওটা n, হ্যাঁ ওটা n-1 plus n-1 করে দিচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ, that part is fine. So basically these two would be 0 0 here because they are already accounted in the second vector here. Is that what you are saying? That I understand. That is fine because these two would be just filling the blanks and this is actually GK and this is actually HK. Okay, that part is fine, but I need the order I need to maintain because I am going to use the whole grid. Okay, so again all of you, so I made a mistake because I was trying to find out the order and check for this thing. So the UK, I have to fill up these gaps with 0, 0 because the initial, the boundary conditions at the bottom, at the top and the bottom, these are already known. So these I will just insert in the end in this calculation here, where it is the coefficient of rho. So this part I'm going to collect here. The actual calculation part will have 2 blanks. And this is the matrix, which is the tridiagonal matrix. So then what is the algorithm? So my U1 will be like this, because U1 is completely known. So the whole of the initial condition and the top and the bottom, I know all of these. Then for k equal to 1 to m, so I'm starting my calculation from U2. U2 is for k equal to 1. So for k equal to 1 to m, I use this equation where this is my UK, blanks at the top and the bottom, and I add up this correction here. These two are known quantities. I do it for every k, and the final solution again would look like this. So is this clear now? So this is how I am defining my UK vector. This is the equation system for the explicit scheme, and the algorithm works in this following way, that I am just writing down U1 because U1 is completely known. Then from U2 onwards up to capital M, I use this equation system so that my final value will look like this. So this is where I exit. Just check and make sure that this is clear, because this is a difference equation written as a matrix system. So the order and these elements, the first and last elements in particular, they are manipulated in such a way that I can write it as a matrix equation. So we need to make sure that this is clear. So are you checking? Can you just check and tell me whether this is fine?
Yes, sir, this is fine.
But it is good that the order thing has been clarified, because otherwise I also wouldn't have noticed that I am writing same thing twice, U1K and etc. So great, thank you. So this is how the explicit scheme works. So the explicit scheme is forward difference in time and central difference in the diffusion. The second method that we are going to talk about is very similar in spirit. The only difference is in the implicit discretization, we use backward difference in time. Why do we need a different method? Because if I am using a first order approximation, I am going to get the same error, same magnitude of error. Later on, we will discuss why the explicit and the implicit need to be discussed separately. We'll get to that when we discuss the stability of the algorithm. Stability in the sense of the convergence properties. So before that, let me first discuss and outline the method. So for implicit discretization, we do backward difference approximation in time, and again a central difference approximation for diffusion. So we just look at that heat equation in 316 again, and at any grid point xj tau k plus 1, we are using these two approximations. So del u del tau is given by this. Remember that now it's a backward approximation. So for tau k plus 1, I am using points k plus 1 and k going back. And the central difference approximation as usual for the diffusion. Same notation. And we already know that the first term will involve an error of magnitude order of delta tau, and the diffusion will involve order of delta x square. So this is our system of equation for different j and k. So this right hand side minus kappa, this right hand side equal to 0, ignoring the magnitude of error, which is now of the order of delta x square and delta tau as in explicit. How does the calculus? Yeah. Good. How does the calculation progress? Again, my circles are known values and solids are unknown values. So the way it works is, I am using this value to generate these three. So of course I cannot generate three values from one single one, but we are going to again set up the system. So in a backward difference approximation, the difference with this first one is, here we were using these three to generate the new one. Here the calculation strategy leads to this kind of a computation sequence, that I am using this one to generate these three. So in all these three equations, this value will be involved. And in a recursive system, we can eventually do all of them. So this is the computational scheme for implicit difference. And if I reorganize my 3.24 equation with our usual row notation, we write kappa delta tau by delta x square equal to rho. So using that notation, this is my system of equation, again 3.25. So just check that again I can rewrite it in this way, where ujk is written as a function of these points j minus 1 k plus 1, jk plus 1, and j plus 1 k plus 1. Correct. Okay. Again, I have drawn my picture wrongly. Have you noticed that? Any of you? That my picture is wrong? Anyone? I have a wrong picture here, so I said something wrong. Are you still online, or is there a problem with the connection?
We are online.
So, did you see my mistake? I made a mistake just now.
So the blank ones means input, right?
Blank ones?
Blank ones means input.
Blank ones are input.
Yeah. That's
So my picture was wrong. So I have just changed my picture. I just edited my picture. The blank ones are inputs, because in the explicit scheme, that was how we worked on it. The blank ones were inputs and the solid one was the output. Now, actually, I said something wrong because I'm going backward. The blank ones, which are inputs, are now on the right, and the output, the solid one, is on the left. So I use these three to get this one. So I thought that it will work out in a system, but no, that is not the point. The point is to calculate this point, JK, I am going to use these 3 points. That's what this equation reminded me. So my picture was wrong. Now just again, so I may have made a mistake again. So can you just check and confirm whether this scheme is correctly displayed in this figure now? So the scheme is as in here, this equation here. And this is the corresponding computation scheme. Are these two consistent? That was my mistake. I think now it looks correct. Now it looks correct because I'm
Yes,
going
sir.
backward. I'm using 3 points to the right to calculate this unknown point to the left. So instead of going left to right, as in explicit, we are going left to right. In implicit, we move right to left. So that is my equation system. And again, I do the stacking. And if I write out this single equation and stack them together, then I will have this system 326. So what will happen is for j equal to 1 and n plus 1, I have the boundary conditions because 1k means g tau k and n plus 1k means h tau k. So those are known. And k equal to 1 corresponds to my initial condition, which is again known to me. That is f. So at all those grid points, I know the values. So the solution for the other time slices need to be calculated. So then we summarize this equation, stack them. The approximate solution for the time slice can be written in matrix form as this equation. So A implicit UK plus 1, because I'm going back, is UK plus rho times this thing, where the first and the last element again are the adjustments, picking up values from the boundary conditions. The implicit matrix looks similar, the same type of matrix, but now the multiplication is on this side. So it's good to contrast explicit and implicit. So in explicit, this is how the multiplication works. So it's on this side, on the right hand side. But in implicit, the multiplication is on the left hand side. So I need to invert. So A implicit is this matrix, and this is my system. So again, just check, let me know if it is logically consistent, because this is my system of equation for each j and each k, which I am stacking together in this 326 equation. So 326 is a result from 325, which we write out like this.
Sir, so we know the boundary, the top and the bottom and the right, for this case.
Yes.
And the right one. Okay.
The right one. Exactly.
Not the left one, like the last
yes.
case.
So that's the crucial difference, because we are going backward. Okay, maybe I should show the equation also. So this is the equation, single equation. This is in the matrix form, and this is the matrix. So again, we write out the algorithm. So the notation.
Sir, actually, I checked Ali Hirsa right now, but
Huh.
it said that uh, it the known cases are same like the last case that we
Okay, so we are on page 90, 91.
know the left one do in each step is in some cells. I just checked Ali Hirsa right now.
Oh, great. So what are you saying?
What it does is like the last case, our top condition, bottom condition, and the left condition is known,
Oh,
the function.
okay.
And what we do
Right,
is
right.
we invert the matrix, and with some Gaussian inversion that this method provides more stability than the last one and can be done in ordered n steps.
Okay, so just give me 1 minute. I will check because the figure 3.5 on page 91 is the relevant figure, correct? Can you all see that? You all have Ali Hirsa. Page 91, figure 3.5 is the grid. Okay. Okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you. Right. Okay. Okay, so the problem is the following, that I am doing backward difference in the time axis, which means here on the horizontal axis. But the equation system, no, not but so that the equation system essentially is going to use points to the right to solve for points to the left. Now, when we start the process, I know all the left points, but we do not know the right points. So we have to set it up in such a way that things can be solved simultaneously using the boundary conditions. The boundary conditions will help us to supply some known inputs, and the remaining things will have to be solved simultaneously. And that is why we need this inversion here. So we'll essentially invert A implicit and multiply on the right hand side. Is that correct, Devshujo?
Yes, sir, that's right.
I think that is correct. Yeah, that is fine. As long as you are here and we can figure it out, it's fine. So basically, what I'm looking at is, in principle, in 325, I'm moving backward. But of course, when I do the actual computation, I only have the leftmost line known to me. So how do I move backward? So in order to be able to move backward, I must solve the whole system together, because then I can also use the boundary conditions. And the way it is done in a matrix form can be written as this inverse operation. So with the inverse operation involved here, I will be able to do that. And again, it would be a good idea to check this for small capital M and small capital N, like 2 and 2. Then we can write it out explicitly and see whether this system is actually consistent. So again, my algorithm would work like this. So I have the U1 as from the initial condition. We know that. And for each K, we are effectively moving backwards, but we are using this inversion on this side. So UK plus 1 can be written notionally as an output involving UK terms. Of course, there are 2 UK plus 1 terms involved here, but these are known. The top and the bottom are known from boundary conditions. So no need to worry. Through this inversion, I am actually going to get UK plus 1 out of UK. That was our problem because the backward term goes backward, but we are solving this forward through this inversion. So that goes on till capital M. So the final solution will be again like UM plus 1 as in our earlier explicit scheme. Now, notice that we must solve this scheme for every time step in our implicit algorithm in a simultaneous manner. So that will obviously involve this inversion, inverting this matrix A implicit. A typical inversion is order of n cube, which would be very costly compared to the explicit method. This would be very costly. But again, my implicit matrix is tridiagonal, as you can see here. And that reduces the complexity to only order of n. So section 3.5 discusses this thing. So you should read it as a homework. That's your next homework, as I mentioned here. Section 3.5 provides the discussion and the pseudocodes of solving tridiagonal or pentadiagonal matrices. So pentadiagonal means there are 2 items beyond the diagonal on both sides. So if we are back to order of n operations, then this method becomes competitive because it's the same order of operation as the explicit scheme. And eventually, later on, we will show that it is actually superior to explicit discretization because the stability properties are more robust for implicit method compared to the explicit method, which I have not discussed yet. So let me hold that for the time being. For now, all we are going to say is to solve this 326 system for each K, I need a matrix inversion. Matrix inversion is typically very expensive, order of n cube. But because my matrix happens to be a tridiagonal matrix, the inversion can be reduced to order of n operations. Also, that is discussed in this section 3.5. You may already know it. Do you already know this kind of algorithms? Because for sparse matrices, there are many algorithms available now. And
No, sir.
No.
No,
No.
I don't.
Okay, fine. So then section 3.5 would be good reading for you. It would be nice reading because it talks about one particular system, tridiagonal or pentadiagonal, but those systems are very common in statistical work. So if we know how to reduce the complexity from n cube to n in this matrix inversion, it's a very useful technique to have in many other situations. So with that tool, implicit difference method becomes comparable in terms of computational complexity to the explicit method. So it is not a very bad candidate to look at. And later on, we will show why implicit is actually better than explicit, but let me hold that for the time being. So again, let me recap because I have been doing some silly things today. So we start with the heat equation. We take the backward difference approximation for the time derivative, and again a central difference for the diffusion term. Combining them, I write out 324 as my discrete version of the heat equation. And I know that the error magnitude is of the order delta x square plus delta tau. How do I solve it? Because I am going backward, so notionally, I have these circles which are inputs and this solid circle, which is my output. But when I'm going to start the method, I know only the first vertical and the top and the bottom. So how can I use all these things as inputs? So we write out this equation system in a matrix form, and notice that if I take the inverse of this matrix to the other side, then operationally, I can write uk plus 1 as a function of uk. So I am in the correct input-output sequence. So once I restore the correct input-output sequence, then I am through. I can write out this algorithm starting from U1 as before, because U1 is my initial condition. And then using the boundaries, I can solve left to right, doing the inversion in every step, and finish with plus 1. In the process, we have to use matrix inversion, which is typically expensive. But then section 3.5 shows that for a tridiagonal matrix, the computational complexity is only order of n. So it is still competitive. So implicit and explicit are comparable in terms of computational complexity. So any questions at this stage? Because I'm going to take a break and then we will start discussing the next methods. But if there are any questions, maybe we can take it after the break also. Then you will have a little bit of time to look at HITSA, because you see, you should keep looking at the textbook itself and not just on the screen what I am showing you, because I am also liable to make mistakes. I am also liable to say things wrongly. So you have to be alert and sort of help each other. So you are also helping me, and I am trying to give you some kind of outline. Before I continue with our discretization schemes, quickly, I want to point out to you two resources I added to the Classroom Drive. So I share. Okay, so here in the Classroom streaming page, I have put up R resource, which I recently received from one of my friends. I don't know whether you have looked at it, but if you are interested in working with high frequency financial data, then this seems to be a very useful resource. Have any of you visited this document? So this is not intrinsically related to this particular course, but because we are learning finance, I found that this might be of interest to you. So this is in the CRAN project page, high frequency data analysis, particularly for financial situations, it would be nice. So this is one resource that I wanted to point out. Also, I have kept in the Classroom Google Drive this paper, which I just mentioned this morning, the original CGMY paper, which talks about the characteristic functions and then asset pricing methods using those distributions that we discussed, like variance gamma, NIG, CGMOI, etc. So again, I advise you to look at this paper. It's a nice paper, and also very important paper in this area. Okay, so now let me resume our chapter 3 discussion. So are there any questions at this point? From this explicit and implicit discretization schemes? All right, so let me continue with the third scheme, which is called Crank-Nicolson discretization. And this is essentially a combination of the two that we have discussed so far, both explicit as well as implicit. So what Crank-Nicolson is doing is the following, that you take average of the forward and backward finite difference approximations in the timeline so that you get a better order of approximation in that dimension. And again, I use the central difference approximation average for the diffusion term. So in effect, what I am doing is I am using a central difference for time and average of two central differences in space. So it is one order higher than the explicit or the implicit method. So like implicit discretization, the use of central difference in the current time will require us to solve everything simultaneously because we'll need that matrix inversion again. And of course, matrix inversion is expensive, but again, we will see that this matrix that is involved in the Crank-Nicolson scheme will be again tridiagonal, pentadiagonal in nature, and the complexity will be reduced. But we'll get there. But first, the idea is that we use a higher order approximation in the timeline for the Crank-Nicolson scheme so that we get a better approximation order. So again, we start with equation 316, which is the heat equation, and notionally think of a point which is not on the grid actually. It is not actually on the grid. So we look at half steps before X and H. So these half steps are not actually points on the grid, but notionally writing the equation in terms of that will help us in understanding the Crank-Nicolson scheme. So just to recall, the central difference approximation that we are going to use is equation 311, which we showed earlier here. So this is our central difference approximation, which has a better order, 311. And we will use that in Crank-Nicolson in the following way. So for Crank-Nicolson, notionally what we want to do is we want to approximate the time derivative at a point which is halfway between k and k plus 1. So del u del tau at xj and tau k plus half. So this point doesn't exist, but what we do is we again artificially take a half step forward and backward. So if I take a half step forward, I will reach k plus 1. If I take half a step backward, I will reach k. Both are on the grid. So my approximation will be in terms of these 2 points, but as if I am approximating a midpoint. So this approximation is then written as ujk plus 1 minus ujk by delta tau. And in terms of the half step, it has a better order of error. Okay. Any questions?
So here the xj's are remains being fixed. Only the time steps are getting
Time
half.
step, yes. For the time step, I want to use a second order, and I do not want to involve points too far on both sides. So what I do is I artificially think of a half step on the timeline. You see, for the diffusion, I am already using central difference. So there I am getting order of delta x square. So it's the time derivative, the time axis that we are trying to manipulate now.
Okay, sir.
So for the diffusion term, as mentioned here, we are using an average of 2 central difference approximations. How does that work? Because again, see, I am targeting a point which is midway on the timeline. So obviously that point is outside the grid. So again, I have to also average 2 steps so that I can reach k plus half. Reach in the sense, quote unquote, reach k plus half. But what I'm going to operate with is actually points like tau k and for tau k plus 1. So we average 2 central difference formula around this midpoint, this notional midpoint, xj and tau k plus half, because I have 2 points, 2 lines k and k plus 1. And my approximation is as follows. So the del 2 del x square term at the mid timeline midpoint is given by this differences, which is an average of 2 things. And that's why I have this 2 delta x square here. So if you look at this, the first 3 terms here, is one central difference. The second lot is the next central difference. So this is for k plus 1, this is for k. So I am essentially averaging 2 verticals which are actually on the grid to notionally approximate a vertical which is in between, but that actually doesn't exist. So because I am averaging, I divide by 2, and this again remains at order of delta x square, the order I am maintaining. So again for timeline, I use central difference, but in terms of half step. For space line, I average 2 central differences so that I can notionally match with my half step in the timeline. So if I use both of them together and rewrite 316, my heat equation in discrete form, then this will be the equation here. So this is the right hand side from here, and this is the right hand side from here. So 327 is my discrete version of the heat equation, and my error order is delta x square and delta tau square. And this is better than both explicit and implicit because I am getting a better approximation in the timeline. Okay, so before moving on to the system, etc., is this concept clear? The concept is I want to use a central difference in timeline, but if I use central difference without any adjustment, then I'll be using 2 points to the right, 2 points to the left. Then supplying the inputs will be difficult. So what I do is I artificially introduce halfway grids, halfway verticals, and I evaluate my central difference at the halfway verticals, so that the inputs I am using are actually on the correct verticals, on the observed verticals, or verticals that I can calculate. In the process, I have a better error order in the timeline. So again, using our usual rearrangement, so I write it out as a input-output type equation and introduce this ratio, which we call rho hat. Remember earlier we had rho, and now I have rho hat, which is basically half of the previous rho, because I had to have this 2 here, this introduce the 2 for averaging. So I have a new rho hat, which is half of rho. Using that notation, this is the new version of this equation in 327. So this is the equation system. So again, we rearrange the equation to move all tau k terms to one side. So all the k terms we put to one side. So this right hand side now has all the k terms together, and the left hand side has all k plus 1 terms together. Note that rho hat is, as I said, just half rho. I can put rho back in the equation. Wherever I have rho hat, I can write half rho. And then I can rewrite this equation in terms of my original rho parameter, because, okay, So let me just move with this. I just reintroduce the row parameter I used earlier for explicit and implicit and write the equation as in this form 330. So the only change we are making now is rearranging terms and writing it out in terms of the old parameter row. Okay, is that okay? We started out with the two central difference approximations and introduce the usual row notation, and we arrive at 330. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Again, I have this previous information. My initial and boundary conditions are still there. What is happening? Okay. So U1k are GKs, UN plus 1k are HK, and k equal to 1 would of course correspond to Fxj or Fj. So boundary conditions and initial conditions. So if I start from the first vertical, I know the values. So the approximate PDE solution for any time slice can be written in matrix form. So now this is where I said that we are actually using both the implicit and explicit schemes. So if you look at 330, in this form, it is difficult to immediately see this connection. But if you just look at 323 and 326, so let me show you 323 first. 323 was for the explicit scheme, this one here, and 326 is the corresponding implicit scheme expression. What is happening in Crank-Nicolson is actually Crank-Nicolson is just adding up the two systems. So in the single equation form, it would be difficult to identify. But once I write it out in the matrix form using our usual UK vector notation, then you can immediately see that this is nothing but sum of my explicit and implicit equation systems. Can you see that? So I will show you once again. 323 for explicit here, and 326 for implicit here. If I add these two up, I will get the form for Crank-Nicolson. So once again, do you see this connection? That's why we changed back from row hat to row, so that this visual connection can be made. Anyone? Can you just check? Let me know.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You have got it.
So essentially my Crank-Nicolson would be involving both the type of computations as in implicit and explicit, because I'm using both the structures together to achieve a central difference approximation in the timeline. What we are doing is we are using the backward and forward. In a sense, we are using the backward and the forward together, adding them up to get the Crank-Nicolson scheme. That's how the scheme came about. So the algorithm again goes like the same way as before. We know U1 as in the explicit scheme, and for each step k equal to 1 up to m, this is my system of equation that I need to solve. So what I am going to do is I am going to invert this matrix I plus A implicit. So I plus A implicit is the matrix I'm going to invert. Again, it's a tridiagonal matrix. So complexity we know can be reduced to order of n. And the final solution again will be in the form um plus 1. So notice that we must solve this system simultaneously involving the matrix inversion. But as I said, the tridiagonal nature of the matrix implies we are going to require only order of n operations. So just to recap, a Crank-Nicolson scheme is in effect a combination of both the explicit and the implicit. How so? We want to introduce a better order of approximation on the timeline, delta tau square order. We try to achieve that using a central difference, but we don't want to use too many grid points. So what we do is we artificially introduce a half step and do the approximation around that half step. Because it's a half step, we have to take an average for the central difference in the diffusion term so that we get back points on the grid. And the central difference on the timeline around that half step gives me this expression with a better order of approximation. If I rewrite it in the matrix form, we can see the connection clearly, how Crank-Nicolson is a combination of both implicit and explicit, which is shown in this 3.31 equation. And hence, the algorithm would proceed in the same way as before, again requiring matrix inversion, but it would be not expensive, not too expensive, as the matrix is tridiagonal. So that is the Crank-Nicolson scheme, essentially a combination of explicit and implicit. And that happens to be the most common method. That is a very common method in this kind of numerical algorithms. But there is one more scheme that we are going to discuss here, which is called a multi-step scheme. A multi-step scheme is a scheme which uses a second order backward approximation in time. So we are using 2 previous time points. Whereas in Crank-Nicolson, we used an artificial grid to avoid doing that. A multi-step scheme does not go into any artificial point, but it explicitly uses 2 previous time points to get a second order backward approximation in time. Because we know that if we need a second order approximation, I will need 3 points. So if one is the current one, then two previous ones will be involved in a backward approximation. So to perform multi-step, again, I start at the grid point j and k plus 2 because I want to go back to k. So notionally, I have done work up to jk and I want to move to the right. So I am planning for discretization at jk plus 2. We use backward approximation for the first term, second degree. So it will be an order of delta tau square, and a central difference as before for the diffusion term. Now there is no need for averaging because I am working only on the actual grid. I am not moving to the half steps. So the backward difference for the first term, the time derivative will look like this. I am at jk plus 2, remember, so I am going backwards. So these are the points involved, and it is going to be order of delta tau square. The central difference, again, at jk plus 2 will involve these points. So it will be j minus 1 at the back, j plus 1 forward, and j in the point where we are evaluating it now. Again, I know its central difference, so order of delta x square. So this is my order of approximation. All right, is the scheme clear? I'm using an explicit second degree backward difference for time, so no half steps, and the usual central approximation for the diffusion term. So if I combine these two, my differential equation, heat equation, comes to this form 3.32, which is the discrete version of my heat equation involving these points. And this is explicitly of the order of delta x square and delta tau square. Okay, so far?
Yes, sir.
Now, there is one additional challenge that we face in the multi-step scheme. That is, when I am at the first time slice, so the first means k equal to, first means actually k equal to, what am I saying? K equal to 2, because the very first one is the initial condition. So we know the values. When I am at the first slice, time slice, where I am going to have to do the computations, I need two previous time points, but there is only one available. When I am at the second column, the second column is the first one that I need to compute. I need two previous columns, but there is no -1 column, obviously. So for multi-step, very first time slice, we only have solutions for the PD at the immediate previous time step, which is the initial condition. Thus, the multi-step must have an initial step. So at the first step, I must do something simpler to generate the first vertical. The first vertical I have to somehow generate. And for that, we are restricted to using a first order approximation only, because that is the only data that is available to me at that point. So multi-step is not a purely second difference method. At the first step, I am going to use a first order method, and typically the implicit method is chosen because it is more stable. So multi-step is a sequence of two things. First, I do an implicit step to generate two verticals, and from then on, I start using the central approximation from the third vertical onward, and I can consistently use the data generated previously. So do you see this problem and how it is being solved? Because I need two previous points. At the first step, I do a compromise. I do a first order approximation, and typically implicit method is used. Subsequent steps, I am good. I can use the second order. So algorithmically, this does not pose a problem because I can write out consistent system of equations which will be executable. No problem. I use first order initially and then second order. However, we know that the implicit method has a higher order of error. It's order of delta tau. So if I am doing option pricing, and if the discontinuities are such, typically they are like that. Discontinuities are typically at the terminal payoffs, which is the initial time points or the end time points. Remember, when we do option pricing, we work backwards in time. So the initial condition is actually the terminal payoff. Remember, we mentioned this earlier that we define tau as capital T minus T. So when I'm saying tau equal to 1, I'm actually near the terminal payoff. Do you remember this? At the beginning, we set up such a convention because usually terminal payoffs are fully known. Is this clear? Anyone? If you go back, you will see that we introduced such a convention at the beginning. Can some of you confirm that this is something that we discussed indeed? Am I still connected? Can you confirm
sir.
that? Yeah, you can hear me, right? So do you remember this? Can some of you, any of you confirm this convention of writing the time backwards? It was back in chapter 1. Let me open that file and where is it? Wasn't it here? Sorry, I don't seem to see it, but I remember that we discussed it at some point of time. Can some of you remember where we did that? This change of the time variable convention. Okay, so right now I am not able to identify, but I remember we did this. Maybe it was last term. Was it last term? Okay, so anyway, so let me make that statement once more categorically. So in our multi-step scheme, the algorithm has been taken care of. Algorithmically, we know that we have this error, but the first step has to be done in the implicit manner. So in option pricing, we typically write the time backwards. We introduce the convention that the option price timeline is t, but we write tau equal to capital T minus t. So my initial time is actually the terminal time in the real time axis. So the initial condition, what we use as initial condition, is essentially the terminal payoff. And because I am making a lower level approximation near the terminal payoff, we need to be careful that we do not propagate that error backwards throughout. So when I am solving the system, I am repeatedly using the solution provided from the first slice, from the first vertical. And the first vertical has a higher degree of error. Later on, I am using a better method, but if the input is of lower quality, then the output will also be influenced. So there could be an error propagation. So that is something that we need to be very careful about, that in a multi-step scheme, the advantage that we are creating using the additional second order difference is not lost through this initial error being propagated throughout, where the initial error is coming from the implicit method approximation, which is of a lower order. Is that clear now? Can some of you confirm? Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
So all right, so after we solve this first time slice, subsequently we can solve everything using the simultaneous equations by the usual rearrangement of our equation and grid solution from previous 2 time points. So this is the final scheme. So 333 equation is our final scheme, where this equation combines both the second degree approximations, time and diffusion. Again, I use this notation of a rho symbol and write the equation like this for the whole system for each j and each k. Remember, j now starts from 2. Again, for j equal to 1 and n plus 1, I have boundary conditions. And for k equal to 1, I have the initial condition. After that, the multi-step scheme system, as in 333 or in this line here, can be rewritten as this matrix equation system 334. So the multi-step scheme computes uk plus 2 in terms of uk and uk plus 1. We need to remember that when I am starting I solve for U2, then I do not have a UK. So for the very first step, I am only using an implicit scheme. The matrix MS is again a tri-diagonal matrix. If you look at these coefficients, it is again a tri-diagonal matrix. So inversion will not be so expensive. Algorithm. So U1 is again the initial conditions. Then I use the implicit scheme. Actually, I should say U2 to be consistent. Then from k equal to 2, I am at the next step. So I can solve for the remaining using this matrix equation system 334. Hold on. This is not right. This should be 1. Right? Because I am solving U2, then I am at U3. 3 is k equal to 1. And m minus 1 is m plus 1. Okay. Okay, so I think this is right. Can you check this? Because I have U1 as my initial condition. U2 I solve using the implicit scheme with the initial condition. And then I start from U3. U3 in this scheme will be k equal to 1. And I will finish at m minus 1. Am I doing it right?
Yes, sir.
So my scheme 334 is written here again. So that's what I do for 1 to m minus 1. That's the finish. And the final solution at tm plus 1 will be um plus 1. Again, as in the explicit scheme, it will look like the same. We have to solve everything simultaneously, but again, we are inverting a tri-diagonal matrix only, so it's order of n. So in terms of complexity, all of these methods are of similar order of n. The only difference is what kind of approximation are we using? Forward, backward, central, or a combination of the backward and the forward. So explicit and implicit are just forward and backward. Crank-Nicolson is using both the explicit and the implicit. So it's a combination of both of these things. And multi-step is a second degree central, second degree backward approximation for time. So we use a little bit of adjustment in the first step using implicit scheme. So these are the 4 schemes which we are discussing. And so far, all we know is the complexity is of a similar order, because even though implicit onwards we are inverting matrices, either A implicit or A MS, but because they are tri-diagonal in nature, the inversion will not be the usually expensive order of n cube, but it would only be, it can be done in only order of n steps. So all 4 have similar kinds of computational complexity and different approximations, which would lead to different kind of stability properties, which we will discuss next day. All right. So this is where I want to stop today, because the stability analysis we will discuss with a fresh mind. Today we have discussed 3 algorithms, which I think is enough for one day. But they are very similar in principle, very similar in spirit, just different kinds of approximations being used. So I thought that doing them together would not be too much. Any questions?
Sir, এটা ছোট প্রবলেম ছিল, একটা মানে একটা ছোট ডাউট।
Can everybody understand Bengali here?
Not Prabhat. I think Rajan Ravi.
Yes, basically, I and Ravi don't understand Bengal.
Sorry?
Yeah, sir, I and Ravi are not from Bengal, so we
Okay, so
find difficulty in understanding Bengal.
Yeah, I understand that. So basically I am signaling Devsurya to continue in English. That's all.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
So the thing is, so the matrix inversion uh, being order and not order NQ has shown as a big thing. Like order n is making it much easier, but I don't think that that should make much difference, because we can like invert the matrix once and can save it as an inverted matrix. So I don't know that why is it they mentioned that it has to be done in every step.
Very good
So
question. Very good question. Okay.
yes. So the for one inversion, if I mean for one inversion, order of NQ can be like done. So if it has to be like done once only. So I think that some that can be done.
I understand. So actually this takes me back to a question that Subhrajyoti asked me earlier, that we are doing computational finance, but where is the data? It's that was a more basic question, but it actually relates to the one you are asking now, Devsurya, because you see, we are not really looking at a static situation here. Any computational algorithm ideally targets real-time application. What is a real-time application? A real-time application is which will update itself continuously in time as soon as new data comes in.
Also, the matrix inversion has to be done performed many times.
Many times.
Every time something new comes in. Oh, I
Yes.
see.
So that is why n cube and n has a huge difference in our actual burden of computation. Though these algorithms are basically used with streaming data. You understand streaming data, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we look at the stock exchange terminal. Transactions are happening very quickly, multiple times in a second. So we would like to update our solutions as soon as possible, ideally before the next transaction happens. So order of complexity is very critical for us. And that is the main source of our data. So Subhrajyoti, if you are still awake.
Yes, sir. I got disconnected in the meantime.
So actually, I think we discussed it before slightly, right? But maybe the real-time thing wasn't made explicit then.
Yes,
So
sir.
what we really want to do is we have this trading data from the stock market, which happens multiple times a second. And believe me, it is really fast. So we really want to update our solutions equally quickly so that the prices can be updated very fast, almost in real time. And where does the characteristic function and other stuff come in? They come in when we can make reasonably good assumptions on the distribution. So if I have a reasonably good fit with a known distribution, I can save a lot of computation time by fitting that distribution and working with the characteristic functions, because we know that using them reduces my computation to a one-shot Fourier transform computation. It becomes a function engine, so real-time computations are really good. If I am unable to do that, and if I am unable to match that kind of a distribution, then I revert to the finite difference techniques. And again, to make it fast enough, order of complexity is crucial. Of course, all of these will go down the drain if we cannot even write the differential equation, because we started this chapter by saying that we have the heat equation. It's a PDE. So if my option price, if my derivative price, any derivative, not only options, if my derivative price admits a PDE, which I can write out, then I have these finite difference techniques and the corresponding complexity discussions. If I don't even have a PDE to write, it becomes so complicated that an explicit PDE cannot be written. then obviously we will go back to pure simulation, and then the complexity and everything else will become very, very different. It has to be handled in a very different way, because it's no longer like a finite operations algorithm. So that's the whole scheme we are discussing throughout the semester. Best case to worst case. Best case we have discussed, having after fitting a distribution and having the characteristic function, how much can we save? Now we are discussing the middle case, which is typically the most common, that we do not have that kind of a fit, but we can write out the PDE and solve that using numerical techniques. So this chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5 will be devoted to that. But everywhere the emphasis has to be on very fast computation, but with changing data, because the data is live streaming data.
Couldn't we use a sequential analysis kind of idea that we update our data if there is something very significant going on? Only
Of
then.
course you do. Of course you do. As much sequential as you can. You try to store all the previous solutions and use as much of it as you can. Of course. So it is like, I don't know whether you learn these things anymore with this in this computer days. When we were in our BSTAT first year, we learned how to invert a matrix when a new row and column is added to a matrix, and we have already computed the inverse previously. So we called it bordered matrix. Are those things done anymore?
I mean, inverse of partition matrices.
Inverse of partition matrices?
We have done this.
So that the special case was called a border matrix, where the partitions is like one row, one column added. Because we didn't have computing power in the scale that we have now. So those kind of storing and reusing was very, very important. Yes, of course we do that. We use priors whenever we have some idea about distributions. We do use priors, which would help us to compute or make inference with small amount of data, because in some situations we have the other extreme problem that there is very little data. But most of the time in finance, fortunately or unfortunately, we have too much data, and the solutions need to be updated very quickly. All right. Anything else?
Sir, the A matrix depends on rho that depends on kappa, delta t, and delta x. So I think that the kappa changes every time, right?
No.
Kappa.
No. Kappa doesn't change every time. Kappa is coming from the heat equation itself.
Yes, I mean from the extra data that we get.
No, the extra data will not change kappa. Kappa is in the original relation. That's the relation I started.
Yes. Yes, but then the delta t and delta x can also be kept fixed, I think.
Yeah,
Then
exactly. That's what we
in
do.
that regard,
That's
in
what
that regard, A can also be kept fixed because rho is fixed.
No, because our time window is a sliding time window.
Okay.
Remember that what is the grid? The grid is on the timeline and the value line, correct? So you can take a value line to be sufficiently broad so that it will cover all possible cases. But the timeline itself is sliding. That's what we mean by real time.
But is it not regular? Else we can use the same delta t, rho with same delta t.
It is a regular problem, but still the operations need to be done again and again. In fact, some of these algorithms are extremely stable. We will show that next day. But we have to redo the calculations. Because the data points are going to change. You see, currently what we are discussing is a very stylized situation. Just one contract, one history, like that. But in real time, we actually have multiple contracts, different different time window that is being discussed. Everything can change in that. The drama starts with the selection of the grid. Once we have fixed the grid, the rest of it is static, but the grid itself is sliding. I don't know whether it is clear to you immediately, but you have to think about it a little bit in terms of the actual stock market. Day to day, how much new information is coming in.
Since kappa and delta x is fixed, we can keep updating this the window on uh, delta tau time intervals. Then the computation for the computation we can use the previous calculated inverse. That
Yeah,
will make it
some of
easy.
it, some of it. That's what Abhinandan was saying. Of course, we try to use the previous solutions, but we have to still make some adjustments and some inversions will have to be done fresh.
Okay, okay, I get it.
Yeah, no, just check it. This is not a very simple point because we have not really talked about the real data situation yet. We are still in a very classroom textbook toy example type of situation with a fixed grid. So it might not be that obvious, but if you just try to recall what we did last term and what kind of data we looked at, and then superimpose these techniques on that data, then I think the story will be clear. All right, so I think we will stop the class today.